Tom, it's so great to talk to you today.
Likewise, Tim. Thank you so much for having me on your channel and sharing me with your audience.
Thanks for being here at timforce.com. If you don't know Tom, which you probably do from his hiring, talent recruiting business, and specifically, he had a post on LinkedIn. And when I read it, I thought it was awesome. It had me thinking about the hiring process. And so it kind of created for me kind of like a hiring checklist of a process. And it started me thinking about, well, what other things can we do? But I'm just curious, what led you to put the post in there? And I call it the Tom hiring process. But what kind of inspired you to put that in there?
I think us humans, when it comes to tasks that we're not experienced with, or don't have background in, we chronically underestimate the complexity and the amount of time that it's going to take. Maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but I mean, take, your average home improvement project. You're trying to fix a sink or paint a bathroom or something like that. And, you look at YouTube, you're like, okay, I got this. I'll knock it out on Saturday morning. All of a sudden it's Sunday evening and you're taking yet another trip to the hardware store to buy more stuff and get more tools and try to figure stuff out. So I think that is true for the hiring process for many people if they don't have much practice with it or if they haven't engaged in it in a while. So that's what inspired me, just to kind of lay out like a reality check, like these are all the things that we need to do in order to have a successful process.
Well, Tom, when I hear the ads, I hear ads on podcasts and online and stuff. And it says, all I have to do is go to indeed.com and boom, I'll have the job filled in 30 seconds is what they lead me to believe. So what is it in reality? What is it like really? So is it just put an ad up on Indeed, or is there more to it than that?
There's a lot more to it than that. Putting up an ad on Indeed is a step of the process, or it may be a step of the process. But there's a lot of, I think the most important stuff happens in the beginning, in the planning phase, laying out that course for how you plan on making a hire.
Exactly. And I know my response to your post was the onboarding. I've got my parts as far as the onboarding process and thinking about the KPIs. And the thing that I think that a lot of people don't realize is the difference between hiring someone for a job and the impact that person, not just hiring someone to fill a spot, but also being an impact player and what that can do for your business long term and how all that plays into doing this work in this process into that long-term performance in that position and for the business. What is your process?
Sure. So at the very beginning, and this is what we do with our clients, but if there's companies out there bootstrapping this, it's just getting really clear on what it is that you're trying to accomplish in general at your company and specifically with making a hire. And so, in many ways, your hiring plans are an extension of the good business plan that you've put together. And if you're a new company with a new product, your go-to-market strategy. So really being clear on what your goals are. We like to start with our clients with something we call a scorecard. And it's kind of like an avatar of what the ideal candidate would look like. So, we write down what the mission behind the position is. What's, in one sentence, what is this person going to accomplish? From there, we get into challenges that they'll need to overcome, goals they'll need to meet. Oftentimes, it can be helpful to attach time-sensitive KPIs, so grow the revenue from here to here in X amount of time, for example. The next part is 5 bullet points that lay out key competencies or bits of their background. So maybe it's their education, experience with a particular type of product, experience getting products into a particular sales channel. Maybe it's a C-store or a club store or, whatever the case may be. And then the last part is 5 bullet points on personality, values, and or culture fit. We feel like it's really important to have all these things in place. And, your job description might have a lot more than 15 points to it, but ultimately there's no such thing as a perfect candidate. We would want to just get as close to it as we can, and narrowing it down to those 15 points, I think is really helpful.
My first thought is, well, in preparing for our talk today, one of the things I was thinking about, one of your parts of your process is comparing candidates, thinking of a way to compare candidates for a particular job. And so one of the things that I've experienced in the past is you've got, let's just say you have 2 or 3 really good candidates that you're excited about for a job, but their strengths are all in 3 different areas. and you're trying to decide like which one is best. I'd love to have that in the job. I'd love to have that in the job, and I'd love to have that particular impact in the job as well. And so how do you kind of filter through those candidates and deal with that? That's something you deal on every assignment like that. So what is it? How do you handle something like that? How does that work?
It's such a great problem to have. I love it when I can present to my clients more than a handful of really great candidates, and the decision is hard to decide between them. So anyways, strategies that you can use. I mean, ultimately it comes back to that scorecard, what you're trying to accomplish. One thing we have done in the past, sometimes if the candidates are okay with it, is start the reference check process before extending an offer. Sometimes that can bring in a little bit more information to the table. But it's ultimately up to the hiring manager and the leaders of that company.
When you do the pre-planning that you talked about, and when you do the scorecard ahead of time, does it help prevent that problem that we just talked about, kind of like falling in love with a particular candidate over another one, because you've done this other pre-work and you're not so heavily influenced by, say, personal interaction or things that are not even on the scorecard?
That is one of the great utilities of it, is that hopefully you have some time to reflect and a time of calm when you're creating that scorecard, because inevitably things get really hectic, and especially a couple weeks into a hiring process where you're interviewing candidates and bringing them on site and doing all this stuff, you can get pulled in a lot of different directions. And so having that scorecard to refocus, if it's just you doing the hiring or your team, and to help everyone objectively look at, the criteria that you laid out in a moment of calm, and then,
Right.
How those compare to the candidates that you're considering.
You mentioned in your post about having different people interview, or a group of people interview. How do you do that? Is there like technology, or like if you have 5 people that want to interview a person, or 3, let's just say you have 3, several people. How do you go about orchestrating those individual interviews? You just like hand it off and say, okay, you meet with them, you meet with them, and you meet with them. You guys figure it out. How do you do that? Is it Calendly system, or what's the process? An easy, effective way for say 3 people on your team to meet with a candidate? How does that work?
You might find this surprising, Tim. I really enjoy Calendly. I think it's one, the greatest thing since sliced bread when it comes to these things. What I've discovered is actually not everyone is into Calendly. Some people have some fears around it. Some people, I think, attach an amount of respect that comes with calling, picking up the phone and just comparing calendars over the phone. For lack of a better term, some folks are old school like that. So when I use Calendly, I always try to present it in such a way like, we can use this tool to all get on the same page, or if you'd like to get on a call or exchange some emails, that's okay too.
Did you want to walk us through any of the steps that we haven't talked about?
Sure. So, in the beginning, in that planning phase, we spoke about the scorecard, coming up with a thorough job description and job title and salary range is really important. And I think having a reality check, early on, talking with someone in your industry, whether it's a recruiter like myself, an HR professional, someone who's been around the block, just to make sure that, your job description is appropriate, your job title is appropriate, and you're going to be able to get the candidate that you want based on the budget you have for compensation. Another thing is laying out the steps of your interview process. Having all that laid out ahead of time is really important. Showing the candidates that you're interacting with that you have a plan, that you're a professional organization, giving them expectations about what the timeline is going to look like, what the steps are. That's really important for winning the respect of the candidates and keeping them engaged, and letting them plan around those things as well. It's also actually really important. We spoke a little bit about, I think in our email, about unintentionally using illegal hiring practices. One kind of general guideline is that you need to have a consistent process across candidates to ensure that everyone is being treated equally and consistently. And so laying out that plan ahead of time is important. Sourcing strategy. So where are you going to find your candidates? A conversation I always enjoy having with my clients is, are there any companies in your space, competitors or otherwise, that you'd like to recruit out of, is, one part of the sourcing strategy that we use. And it kind of depends on, if you're going to use recruitment or not, and the level of position and everything. But, I like to think of it as like starting at the center of a spiral and spiraling out. So, start with the lowest hanging fruit. Is there someone within your company that can be promoted into the position that you're hiring for? Spiraling outward, do you have folks in your network that that might want to come and join you? Or perhaps second degree connections, folks in your network that know other folks that are looking for a job. Beyond that, you can use traditional means like job boards, LinkedIn, Indeed, ZipRecruiter, and so on. That is drawing in on what we call the active candidate pool. So active candidates are people who are currently looking for a job. They're scrolling the job boards. They're, filling out applications, doing all that stuff. The power of recruitment, whether that be a third-party person like myself or recruitment done internally, is that you can reach out to the passive candidate pool, which are all those folks out there who are not looking at LinkedIn job boards, but are open to hearing about new positions. And in fact, that makes up the majority of candidates out there. The active candidates are a pretty small pool. The passive candidates are a much larger pool. And so, if you can get someone on the first spiral too, great. But I think tapping into the passive candidate pool is so powerful.
Where do I decide, I need a recruiter for this type of job? Or how is it that someone begins to think about the ROI or the KPIs, of actually, do I reach out to someone or do I do it internally? How does someone think through that process to be thinking about external support or external help in filling a position or helping to grow their business?
I think that you just have to consider the value that recruitment brings, and whether or not it, brings you the value that you need, or it's worth the investment or not. Some of those value points that I would point out. One, you'll be able to draw on a much larger candidate pool. You'll be able to talk to those passive candidates that aren't looking at that Indeed or that LinkedIn job announcement. You'll be able to outsource a lot of the effort and energy and time that goes into these processes, so that you can focus on, what your, core tasks are. By having a professional handle the process, it's most likely going to go more quickly than if someone who doesn't have experience hiring is sort of going through the process, learning as they go, maybe making mistakes and correcting. You just have a much, straighter line of sight on your goals. And then, beyond that, I think that by hiring a recruiter or some other outsourced resource, you can kind of buy into some network and some knowledge as well. So, trying to figure out if you have legal hiring practices, the right job title, the right salary range, the right strategy even, especially you asked in this email about, advice for companies that are growing, wanting to disrupt. That can be a really hard thing to hire for. With a company that has aggressive goals and is going to be rapidly changing, you have to be able to know, is this person still going to be relevant 3 years from now if we reach our growth goals? Should we maybe hire above a little bit and, let this person kind of grow into the role, or have the role kind of grow into the person? And then, one other thing I'll add too is reasonable expectations. So a question that I've received a lot from CPG companies is a request like, we're looking to hire our first marketing person. We're looking for them to develop this strategy that, works on social and, works through our direct-to-consumer website. We also want them to create social media posts and respond to DMs. And there's not a lot of people out there that, have like an MBA in marketing who also want to respond to DMs on a daily basis. So, having a knowledgeable person to kind of help guide you through that process. And sometimes, the answer to that particular situation is you might want to just hire an outsourced or fractional marketing person, and then maybe a more junior entry level marketing person who can kind of do the daily tactical stuff, and then that fractional person can, guide you on strategy. So sometimes that's the way the conversation goes. Actually, half the time it's like, you don't need me right now. Maybe in the future, I would try this first.
One other thing, just talking to you about this, I know so many clients I talk to, they take such a passive role in the hiring process. It's like we have to, we're going to put up an ad, we're going to somehow put something out there, and then hopefully the candidates roll in. Everything you've been talking about is so much as far as taking control of the process, building the process, and then going out there and going to the marketplace. It's really a different take on the hiring process than a lot of the people that I talk to in the food industry, from my perspective, from a lot that I've seen.
I think that, I don't know if it's a paradigm shift that has occurred through history or if it's just my own thinking, change of perspective, but there might have been a time, say around the last big financial crash, 2008 onward, where a lot of people were out of work and you could put up an ad and it was a cattle call and you'd have a lot of really great candidates coming to you. It's just not the same these days. There are more jobs than people to fill them. We have a talent supply chain issue. And, some of these jobs, it takes a while for people to develop the skill set to say, lead marketing strategy for a CPG company. It can take years. So companies really do need to be active and aggressive when it comes to pursuing their talent. The analogy I like to use is, think about it like a sales process. We can't expect our products to sit on shelf and people just to find them and rave about them and buy them again and again for years and years. We really have to be proactive about, making the consumer aware of, what we have to offer and all that stuff that like you get into in your book. It's really a sales process. You really need to go out there, find your customer, or in this case, your candidate, and have a really good pitch. Be ready to listen to what it is that they're looking for and be able to explain, how your company could be a solution for that, or, help them toward their goals. So yeah, I love that observation about, passive companies.
You have such an incredible background. How has your background helped you to be so effective in recruiting? What is your background in your career? Kind of how has that shaped your recruiting career?
I think I'm kind of a glutton for pain when it comes to, like, I'm willing to sacrifice a lot and be uncomfortable to get to a summit, or to the bottom of a canyon or down a river or whatever. So I think that plays over well. I mean, when it comes to recruiting, and, I might go through 3,000 resumes for a client trying to find someone and, have 60 phone calls, and, it's just a lot of work. It's like climbing a mountain. And so I think I've taken some of that tenacity from my passions outside of work and applied it here. When it comes to education, it's kind of just another service job. I mean, I feel like with education, I was serving young people. In this case, in recruitment, I'm serving entrepreneurs and companies, and, meeting them where they're at. So with a student trying to learn about photosynthesis, you need to understand what their current level of knowledge is and build upon that and, try to move the needle a little bit. And it's the same with my clients, seeing what they understand about the process, seeing what gaps we need to fill in, and going from there.
What are your favorite assignments? What have been your favorite assignments in the past for people if they're listening to this, thinking about they're growing their food business and they think there may be an opportunity? I'm curious what you find as the best fit, or what you're most energetic, what gives you the most satisfaction in your job as far as the type of assignments you fill and the type of clients that you work with. Can you describe some of that to us?
Sure. So, a sweet spot for, I'll say us, it's myself and my business partner, Amanda Scott. Our company's called Solution Harbor. Amanda was the founder. We found the sweet spot for us is companies that are between, 15 and 250 people in headcount, and then about the same in revenue, 15 to 250 million in revenue. We really like working with that size company because we feel companies like that are really nimble and able to, adjust to the challenges and demands of the talent marketplace. And we also feel like, to go back to moving the needle, there's a lot that we can do at companies of this size. In terms of job functions that we enjoy doing and are specialized in, operations, finance, human resources, and sales are what we've done the most work in and we really enjoy.
I know people can reach you. They can send you an email if they have a question about hiring or talent searched or any requirements there. Tom at solutionharbor.com. Also, more than likely they may know you on LinkedIn, but they can definitely hit you up on LinkedIn as far as you accept any DMs, messages, connections on LinkedIn as well. Is there anywhere else, any other ideas as far as catching up with you? Is that the best way to go? What do you recommend?
Those are the places you'll find me. And I spoke earlier on the call about talking to a professional at the beginning of your process, and I'm always happy to jump on a call with people. So we can put my phone number up there too, 213-293-7250. You're welcome to give me a call as well, and I'm happy to talk with you about what you're trying to accomplish as a company and how a hire might help you get toward those goals.
Is there anything else that we should talk about? Have we missed anything about the hiring process that you wanted to share or discuss?
One other thing I'll throw in there is there can be a lot of stakeholders in these hiring processes and decisions. There might be someone running screening calls. There might be someone within the department who is then taking those screened candidates. You might bring in a board member or a C-level individual for the final decision. It's really important to have someone kind of running point with the candidate and keeping them engaged throughout. And so just delegating that responsibility to someone to kind of keep the pulse of the candidate, measure their level of engagement, keep confirming on compensation, keeping your eyes peeled for competing counteroffers. Like, I speak with candidates every time I talk with a candidate, unless it's, twice in one day, I'll ask, are you considering any other opportunities? What does the timing look like? So having someone to run point on the candidate, keeping them engaged, but then also keeping the team members at the company engaged, because growing companies, there's a ton of stuff going on, right? Hiring is just a small piece of the pie, and having someone kind of manage that project and making sure that things don't fall through the cracks is incredibly helpful and will just help smooth things out. So whether that's a recruiter running point or someone in your company, make sure that someone has that title.
This has been great, Tom. I think this is very helpful for food entrepreneurs, food brand owners. And I recommend, if anyone has a question or if you're curious about your food business and hiring practices, reach out to Tom and talk to him. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and expertise today. And we appreciate you being here at timforce.com.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me, and everyone out there who views this. Thank you so much for listening and watching. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Tom.